All right, guys, we do have an official look here at the 12-team playoff that I wanted to show everyone. We had been following the story. Of course, the 12-team playoff is coming to college football, not next year. It's actually the year after next. So we've still got the exact same 4-team model for next year. And then after next year, we will be getting the 12-team. But this is just, a great graphic here from this person on Instagram. He always, you ever get a 12-team playoff, this is a really good job in the way of graphic design. But you can see, guys, it's pretty funny. There's no way this is how, if this was a 12-team playoff, no way this is how the committee would seed it. It is so lopsided. The right side of the bracket has Clemson, Michigan, even Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, USC. The left side has Tennessee with a backup quarterback, Kansas State, Tulane, TC. I mean, it's just so lopsided. So that is technically how it would look based on the seeding. The top 4 conference champions get byes. So that is why you see a team like Clemson above Ohio State. It's why you see a team like Utah above Ohio State. There's a lot of debate. Is this the right model? It's almost like you're rewarding teams for playing in worse conferences, especially with like Clemson over Ohio State, the ACC compared to the Big Ten. Certainly, I think there's a balance. We definitely want to reward conference champions. I almost wonder if it's a situation where instead of giving, a conference champion an automatic bye, you would just say a conference championship automatically makes it in the field instead of giving them a bye. I'm not, that's just an argument you can make when looking at this field because really, Clemson in the ACC, I don't think they deserve a bye. I understand they won their conference championship. They've actually looked a lot better, and now they've got a good young quarterback they're rolling with, but it is a talking point. Is the format right where they get in over a team like Ohio State or even TCU, for example, where TCU has a clearly a better resume than Clemson. They've got a way better strength of record. It's not even close, but Clemson's in at 3. Utah as a 3-loss team, that would probably be even more evident of it. But the Pac-12, at least the Pac-12 was good this year, and Utah is playing good football. But guys, the point of this is what we need. It's going to be a total different atmosphere when it comes to college football because so many teams, we're really just beginning if we get this model. This time of year is really just the beginning point as opposed to right now as we enter bowl season. It really feels like we're winding down and we get these updates on the top four teams and things like that. And it would just be so much, everything would be better. The reveal would be better. The rankings would be better because there's just so much more content to talk about. Like who gets a bye, who are the top, 12 teams, who's number 13, who needs to win, things like that. This would certainly improve the sport, and it's going to make all of the New Year's Six Bowls extremely meaningful. And the first round will be on campus. The second round will not be. I know some people also want the second round to be on campus, but then that ruins the whole idea of the New Year's Six Bowls because the idea of the New Year's Six Bowl is it's at a specific location. If you put the second round on campus as well, I don't know what you do with 4 of those New Year's Six Bowls. Either they get disbanded or they become pretty much worthless because you would have lower tier teams playing in basically meaningless bowls. So I don't know what they would do on that. This is the actual format that I will be, it's been agreed upon. It will be implemented. And I did just want to talk about what it would be and actually, you know what? We can go through the matchups. So again, if this was actually a 12 team, they would not rank these like this. It's completely lopsided. That's my opinion. But it would be Tennessee hosting Kansas State with Joe Milton. And really, that would be a toss-up, in my opinion, in Tennessee, that game in Knoxville. You would have TCU hosting Tulane. That would be, great for their university getting a playoff game. Certainly, Alabama hosting USC. Fun matchup there. We would see Bryce Young playing as opposed to now where it looks like Alabama will kind of be with a mosh pit of players facing Kansas State in their bowl game, and then Ohio State taking on Penn State. That's another situation where I do think the committee would want to avoid a rematch, and you would possibly see Penn State, instead of falling to number 11 in the final poll, possibly stay at number 10, and the matchups would be a little bit different in my opinion. It would probably be Alabama versus Penn State, and maybe Ohio State versus a team like Tulane or Kansas State, something like that, just to balance it out a little bit better, in my opinion. But those would be the matchups on that, maybe in an alternate reality. And then, guys, just something I wanted to talk about that I saw last night. The national media has no one to blame but themselves for making the Heisman a QB award. So this is becoming a real casual narrative, in my opinion. The idea that, it's only a QB award, it's not fair, other positions don't win it. And then you take a look at the comment here. If not, Jordan Davis makes it to New York City last year. I believe Jordan Davis had 2 sacks last year. It's just, but it gets worse. Brock Bowers and or Jalen Carter would have made it this year. You can't blame the voters, and it goes on, blah, blah, blah. So Brock Bowers had 500 receiving yards. Jalen Carter had 3 sacks. It's just like, what are we doing, guys? Like, I understand the whole narrative, and that's what they want to run with, but, like, this is ridiculous. Like, I am more than willing and ready to give a defensive player a Heisman. This year, we've had such a bad Heisman year. It's just been one of those years. There's not a single defensive player in the nation, in my opinion, that deserves the Heisman. And when you're looking at everyone, number one, the quarterback by far is the most important position on the field. So they're already going to have a leg up in that case. If you want to say Stetson Bennett shouldn't have made it, I'll agree with you there. He shouldn't have gone. He shouldn't be in New York. You could have brought Corum. You could have brought Hendon Hooker. If you want to say C.J. Stroud shouldn't have made it, Hendon Hooker should have made it, that's fine. But this whole idea where it's like Jordan Davis had 3 sacks last year, man, like, I know he affects a lot. I understand it. But there's a lot of NFL players, that affect a lot. They're not winning MVP. It's going to go to the most important players. So this narrative, it's just so crazy. And then you see a dude making a comment saying a tight end who had 500 receiving yards should be in New York for the Heisman, and the only reason he's not is because of bias? He had 500 receiving yards. I know he's a great tight end. I get it. But come on, guys. Like, are we really going to do this? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that's why I said my preseason Heisman winner was Will Anderson. That's who I picked. And if Will Anderson had the same stats this year that he had last year, he would win it 1,000%. He had 17 sacks last year. He still had a very good year, but he's just not there. And listen, Caleb Williams, a lot of people don't like him. I get it. But in terms of the voting and stuff like that, I think he probably is most deserving over, I know you could say, some players got injured, things like that. But just in general, even in the game they got crushed by Utah, it wasn't like it was a bad performance. It's really their defense. And I do not think Caleb Williams is a good Heisman winner. But you have to give the award to someone. You have to. And it's like people are talking, like, I'm seeing this and it's like, you're saying someone should win the Heisman with 3 sacks. I'm sorry. I understand he affects more. But you just can't, you cannot, I don't, like, there's no bias. It's just, you're pulling something out of thin air to make a false narrative. It's like me saying, a receiver should win the MVP with 600 yards, but because the NFL only gives the Heisman to quarterbacks, it's biased against the receiver. No, he had 600 yards. He's not winning the MVP with those stats. I'm sorry. It's a total casual take. Listen, we want to give the Heisman to a defensive player, but there's just no one to give it to this year. It's a bad year for the Heisman. I just wanted to say that because I saw it last night, and I just thought, you see the text and you say, all right, whatever, we understand people are going to think that they only give it to the quarterbacks. And mainly, yes, they have been only giving it to the quarterbacks because the quarterbacks this day and age, we're in an era where it's so offensive minded and it's switched from running backs getting all the stats to QBs getting overloaded. And you've got guys like Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson putting up crazy numbers. It's really impossible to give it to anyone else. The quarterback is the most important position on the field by far. It is not close. If USC did not have Caleb Williams, they're losing 5 or 6 games this year with that defense. So I totally get it. There are a lot of positions that are important, but when you see stuff like this and it gets upvotes from people, it really is mind-blowing to me. It really is. And we do need to give it to a defensive player. Chase Young was looking good, and then he gets that ridiculous suspension. And also Joe Burrow goes nuclear that year. That's unfortunate. And yes, Will Anderson 100% should have got invited last year, but I think Aiden Hutchinson came in second place. So it's not like they're not rewarding defensive players. They've done it in the past. So it's just like, if you want to reference defensive players, they got to have more than 2 sacks. If you want to reference a tight end, he's got to have more than 500 yards. I know they're great players. I know stats aren't everything, but when it comes to the Heisman, we're not giving the Heisman to a dude with 500 receiving yards, man. It's just not happening. And he's not going to New York. Like what are we talking about here? Like, how is that even a narrative? I don't know. But I just wanted to discuss that. So, guys, the 12-team playoff coming in 2 years. The matchups are pretty funny to me because I really think they would reseed them and they would want to avoid rematches because you've got that whole right side of the bracket that does seem a little bit overwhelming with Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Clemson, and Michigan. It is pretty crazy compared to TCU, Tulane, Kansas State, Tennessee with a backup quarterback, and 3-loss Utah. So it is interesting to look at. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.